As we get started, I'm going to drop a link here in the chat. This link, libraryguides.missouri.edu/discovery access. That link is going to take you to this guide. Hopefully that guide is public. If for some reason you can't access that or can't see it, I'll make sure to make some adjustments on the back end. But basically, this is kind of my version of a digital handout. So I'm going to keep this guide live even after this presentation is over. And you'll be able to come back here, see these slides, and you'll be able, on this quick links tab, be able to get some direct links to a lot of the things that I'm going to be discussing in this presentation. So this presentation, because it is an hour long, I'm going to zip through a lot of things, and this presentation is going to be pretty light on demonstration. So you'll get a sense of the presentation as we go through, but I will be talking a lot about different resources that we have available to you and explaining kind of the nature of our collections. But I'm not going to be spending a lot of time going through step by step explaining the search process for various databases or services. Partly that's because that could be a presentation in its own right. Part of that is because I think a lot of people are used to playing around with different searches. And I think that searching probably is a little bit more intuitive for users than sometimes we in the library side of things realize, and that a lot of people kind of are comfortable doing keyword searches and playing around with some of the different search options that are available. If you want to learn more about those, we certainly have ways in which you can learn more. You can work with your subject librarians. Hopefully, those of you, especially who are undergrads, will have opportunities to come into the library for instruction as a part of your different classes that you're going to be taking, as well as any grad students or doctoral students who are here. So that's all to say, I'm not going to spend a lot of time doing click by click explaining type the word here, click this button, see what you get. But you'll be able to, by using these links, get to some of these and play around with these resources on your own. So I'm going to get started here. Hopefully you can now see my slides. And I will say one more time, especially if you're an undergraduate who's here for the STAR program, let me know in the chat. Otherwise, just let me know if you're an undergraduate, grad student, faculty, staff, or other. So my name is Joe Askins. I'm the head of instructional services here at Ellis Library. I work here on campus, and I oversee a lot of the teaching services that we provide to faculty and students, and coordinate workshops and webinars such as these. So today's presentation is called Discovery and Access, Researching with the MU Library's Collections. And as I just said, a lot of this presentation is really to get you familiar with what we have in the library, and then sort of the main entry points that we can steer you to so that you can begin engaging with those collections. This is an important topic that I think we don't have the opportunity to spend enough time on in a lot of our different workshops and webinars and in our one-shot presentations to different classes, because we delve so quickly into discussing the sort of step-by-step search process within databases that we don't really get a chance to step back and explain to you, here's what we have here in our libraries, and here's how our libraries are unique in terms of our collections and how we might differ from other libraries. That's especially important to know if you have spent any time at another institution. So if you are a grad student or if you are faculty, there's a good chance that you have done some research at a library other than Ellis Library or at the University of Missouri. You probably did your undergrad somewhere else, or you might have taught or done research at another institution. And every academic library is a little bit different. We're different not only in terms of the spaces that we provide, but our collections are different. The things that we own and hold here on campus are different than things that are held at another university of our size, or a university that's larger, or a college or university that's smaller. The things that we subscribe to are different than the things that other libraries will subscribe to. So we have some databases that lots of other academic libraries have and that are pretty standard across all of academia. We subscribe to certain things that not a lot of libraries subscribe to. There are things that if you go to a different university, you might be used to using that we don't have here. And so it's important for a person coming in to understand here's what we have. And so that's kind of how I'm going to start off. I'll explain a little bit about our collections, and then I will steer you through some of the different, as I said, entry points into working with that collection, how you can start your search, where we would encourage you or advise that you go to be able to find books and articles and other materials that we have. And then kind of the last part of this presentation is going to be covering what you do when it turns out that we don't have something that you need. Because there's a good chance that even if we don't have it, we can find it for you and we can obtain it. And I do want to just acknowledge here in attendance today is Cindy Kottner. She is our head of access services. And so her department is the one that makes sure that you can check out materials. Her department that department includes services like Interlibrary Loan, which is one of those services that ensures that we can find materials from other libraries and bring them here for you to use. And so there's a lot of construction outside of her window today, so I'm not going to ask her to jump on the mic unless there is a particular question that one of you has about access services. So I'm going to move into this here. So some basics about our collection, some things that you need to know about the materials that we have here in the MU libraries. Our collections include, as you might imagine, books. They include periodicals, and periodicals can be anything from a journal, an academic journal, to a newspaper, to a popular magazine. We have federal and state government documents. We are a federal depository, which means that we receive copies of a lot of documents that are published by the federal government. And we also have state government materials as well. And we have maps. And we have a lot of these things in both print format, so the physical item, the books on the shelves, but we also have access to a lot of these things in electronic format. So ebooks, PDFs of journal articles and things of that nature. And then we also have microform formats, which if you are my age or younger, you probably don't have a lot of experience with, but we still have them. It's basically, we have strips of film or sheets of film that have very, very small scans of pages of articles and pages from books that you can basically view in a magnifier. And they were much more common years ago, but we still have them. We have video and audio recordings in physical and electronic formats. So we have things like DVDs, we have CDs here. We also, from time to time, have access to certain streaming videos, although streaming video is a pretty pricey product these days, but we do have access to some streaming audiovisual content in our collection. We have a special collections department that collects and manages things like rare books, rare manuscripts, old posters, old artwork, other objects, things like cuneiform. We actually have pieces of cuneiform in our collection, and those are things that that department uses or makes available both to scholars as well as they use in the classroom to help teach. We have university archives, so we collect, our university archives department collects administrative records, private papers, manuscripts, things that are related to the history and operations of MU. And it's important to note that a lot of those things, especially that come out of the university archives and materials that come out of special collections, are also things that when we have the opportunity, we try to digitize and we try to make available to people online. And then I have that on and more down there because we also have things like audiovisual equipment. You can check out cameras, you can check out other electronic devices that you can use for personal use or use for class. So we have all sorts of items in our collections. And then the question is then who can use it? So since we are a public library, our space is open to the public. And since we are a federal depository of government documents, we have to make sure that we make those documents available to our users. But generally speaking, especially when we start talking about being able to check out items, take items with you, access our digital collections, access our electronic collections, like journals, scholarly articles, things like that. Generally speaking, the people who have access are current students, current faculty, and current staff. And those people have checkout privileges for physical materials and can access things like the articles and ebooks that we have available online. Now, there are exceptions to that. If you have emeritus status as a faculty member, generally you maintain access to items in our collection. There are ways in which, if you are not affiliated with MU, you can sign up for to be a member of what we call friends of the library, and that gives you limited access to especially our physical materials. If you come here as a guest, you can use guest computers in the library and access some, but not all, of our electronic materials, so things like our databases. But generally speaking, we keep things kind of locked down to just our current affiliates, current students, current faculty, and current staff. And what's especially important to know is, unless you join that Friends of the Library group, or unless you achieve emeritus status after retirement, you are going to lose access to most or all of what we have in our collection once you leave. So once you graduate, even if you were an alum, even if you were a member of the Alumni Association, that doesn't mean that you get to continue being able to log in and access these materials. What if you are employed here and you move on later on, even if you still live in Columbia or if you live in the state of Missouri, you're not going to have access to all the things that we have here. So that's important to know. We get a lot of questions about that. And so it's important to know that that these are things that you have access to primarily while you are active here at Mizzou. So where do we keep these things? We keep physical materials at Ellis Library, which is our big main campus library here in the center of campus. But we also keep things at an engineering library, a geology library, our health sciences library, our journalism library, our math library, our veterinary medicine library, and at an offsite depository. So we have a variety of libraries around campus, and for a lot of those specialized subject libraries, basically everything after Ellis Library, a lot of the materials pertaining to those disciplines are kept there instead of in Ellis. The depository is located in Columbia, and we have the ability to retrieve items out of there and have them delivered to campus. But understand that that depository is off campus, and that it does take a little bit of time from the time an item is requested to make it over here to campus. But that's also just to understand, we have lots of libraries around campus. And in fact, you see here the law library, which is close to Ellis, and that is another library that's on campus, even though they aren't really truly affiliated with the MU libraries. They are more closely affiliated with the law school, but they are our colleagues here, and they are another library that's on campus. It's important to know that collections change. So I've gone through and I've described the types of materials that we have in our collection, but as with all modern libraries, the sizes of our collections are always changing, and our collection is both expanding and contracting sort of at the same time. And that's always happening. It always has happened, and it always will. So we both acquire new materials. We're purchasing new books. We're purchasing physical books. We're purchasing ebooks. So we are growing our collection. But at the same time, we have to go through the process occasionally of weeding our collection. That is a term that you'll find in the library world. We weed our collection of old items, damaged items, and frankly, items that are just out of date or just are not getting used. Sometimes we have to make space for newer materials. Sometimes an item just simply is not worth keeping in the condition that it's in, and we have to make tough decisions about whether we're going to keep or get rid of something. If there's a book that we know that we can easily obtain from another library, maybe we might decide that we don't need our copy. So those are things that we have to really consider, and that our librarians are always considering. Sometimes you'll see on social media, somebody will post a picture outraged about a dumpster outside of a library that has books in it. And always you end up seeing librarians who have to jump in and kind of explain, this is part of the process. So that's just to say, our collection expands. It also sometimes contracts, and those are not decisions that are made lightly. Also, when it comes to our journal access, you have to understand that a lot of the scholarly articles and a lot of the academic journals that we have access to nowadays come in the form of electronic subscriptions. So we pay for subscriptions. We pay to get access to databases or to individual journals. We sign contracts to have those subscriptions. Those subscriptions typically are not cheap. And then every year or so, we have to go through and make a decision about whether we're going to renew or cancel that subscription. And that decision can be based on a variety of factors, such as need. So we need to make sure that we're providing our faculty and students with access to the research that is relevant to their discipline, so that they can keep up with the literature in their discipline and be able to do the searching, do the research that they need to be able to help their own research. Use. So if we subscribe to something and we notice over time that we're paying a lot for it and it's really not getting used at all, that might influence our decision. And then cost. So as I said, these things are not cheap, and we have to make decisions based on our own budget and based on our own operations, what we can afford to pay for in any given year. And sometimes those are tough decisions. So that's all. I think the main takeaway from that is to understand that maybe something you find one day in the collection, if you come back and look for it a few years later, there's no guarantee that it might be there. But what I'm going to drive home again and again and again today is that if you can't find it here, if we don't have it, or if we had it and we don't have it anymore, there's still a good chance that we can get it for you. So I'm going to stop there before I get into sort of our tools for discovery, and I want to pause really quickly, and I want to see if anybody had any general questions about what I just covered. I will just pause for just a second. You're welcome to use your mic or type something in the chat. And if I don't see anything, I'll move on to the next section. All right, seeing or hearing none, I'm going to move on. So now that you know kind of what our collection is like, where do we as the library try to steer you to begin your searching for particular materials in our collection? So these are different discovery tools that we make available all through our website. So there are multiple points of entry into our collection. The ones that I'm going to address here are things like our books and media search. You'll hear us refer to this occasionally as Merlin, but our books and media search is the first thing I'm going to cover. Then we're going to talk about our subject databases. We're going to talk about Discover at MU, which is called is what we call a discovery tool, and I'll explain why you would want to use that. Our journal finder tool, our article finder tool. And then I'm going to talk about Google Scholar just a little bit. These are all ways in which you can get into our collection and begin searching for materials. And they all have their strengths. So it really is going to depend on what your need is and what types of materials you're looking for. That's really going to dictate which of these you're going to start with. And the more comfortable that you can get with all of them, and the more that you can kind of think through before you start your search, which tool makes the most sense for what it is that you're looking for, the easier it will be for you as you go through and start your research. So let's start with that books and media search. If you look at the library's homepage, and I'm going to switch over really quickly here to our browser, you'll see the library's homepage here, hopefully. And right here in the center of the page, you're going to see this gray box with two tabs on it. And by default, it loads Discover at MU, but I'm actually going to click over and talk about books and media first. So if you click on that, you'll see this search field here. So that's right there, and that loads every time you load the library's webpage. So the things that you'll notice here, it's a single search bar. It says find books, DVDs, etc. at MU. And as the name suggests, this is kind of our classic catalog. We don't have card catalogs anymore with the actual cards in them, but this is what effectively replaced that. And so, as I said, this is often referred to as Merlin. I won't explain to you what the acronym means there. But basically what you're going to find in the books and media search generally are going to be records for the types of items you would typically find on a shelf or in the library stacks, physical materials, the books in the building here at Ellis Library or in the other buildings here at MU, other library buildings here at MU. It's also going to include records for things like ebooks. So it does have some digital content in there. You will find records for ebooks. Part of that reason is because traditionally ebooks are just titles of books that in the old days we would have purchased in physical format, but we have chosen to purchase in a digital format instead. But they are still books. So we do continue to catalog those in there, and you'll be able to find those in Merlin. You'll also be able to find records of periodicals, so journals that we subscribe to or that we own copies of, magazines, newspapers, stuff like that. You'll be able to find records of those, but it's important to know that you're not going to be able to access the individual articles directly from Merlin. So Merlin will tell you, yes, we subscribe to or we have copies of Time magazine, and it will tell you where those old copies are located and what the date range of our holdings are. But you're not going to be able to go directly from there to an individual article that was published in a specific issue of Time magazine. So that books and media search, as I said, since it includes ebooks, we have added a little button right there that says search ebooks. So we've made it a little bit easier for you to go directly to that, to just seeing a filtered search just for ebooks. That can be particularly handy if you are needing to do research away from the building and want to see, well, what is it that they have in electronic format that might meet my needs for right now? And so by typing in your keyword and clicking that, basically the search will toss out any sort of physical materials from our collection that might have shown up in a search, and it will just bring back records of ebooks. So that's our book search or books and media search, but that's just kind of half of the collection because, and not really even half, because we have access to so many articles that were published in academic journals and in magazines and in newspapers, and you need to know how to access those as well. And so the ways that we tend to make those databases available to you so that you can get to them and begin a search for articles is through our website. And again, what I have here is kind of a blown up version of on our website here on library.missouri.edu, kind of 2/3 of the way down. We're looking here at the section called Quick Links and Looking For. And there are kind of two links that I would direct you towards. One says research by subject, and the other says looking for a database. And so these are kind of two ways into the same content. Research by subject, by clicking that link, you will be able to see an alphabetical list of most, maybe all of the different disciplines that are studied here at MU, the different subjects that are offered through our academic departments here on campus, the different majors that are offered. So if you're a journalism student, you can click on research by subject, scroll down to the J's and click journalism. And what you're going to get is you're going to get sort of a curated list of the different databases in our collection that we would recommend you use to conduct research in that particular field. And that set of databases might be different than the ones that we would recommend for a business student or somebody who's doing research in economics or biology or psychology. So if you're not sure which of the many, many databases that we subscribe to, which one you might want to use or where you would want to start, you can always start by thinking about, well, what is your subject? What's the course that you're taking? What's the discipline you're working in? And go there to see what we offer that we would recommend you use. Now, if you're already familiar with databases, or if somebody has told you, you need to go and use JSTOR, or you need to go and use PsycInfo, or you need to use a specific database, you can go over here to the looking for a database, click that link, and what you're going to get is an alphabetical list of all of our databases, A to Z, and you can search for a title and you can go there. So if you know the name of the database that you need to use, you can go there and you can find it that way. So what are databases? Databases are just indexes to articles that are published in academic and popular periodicals, so academic journals and magazines and newspapers. And those databases typically, especially the ones that we subscribe to, typically focus on specific disciplines or subject areas. So we do subscribe to some databases that are kind of interdisciplinary or cross-disciplinary and include articles from all sorts of different journals coming from all different fields. But a lot of the databases we subscribe to are going to be very subject specific. and they're going to only include articles published in periodicals that are related to that subject. So by using a database, it sort of allows for a sophisticated or comprehensive searching within a specific discipline. And because of that, they often offer specialized features in the search that are unique to those disciplines. The one that I always think of is when you use our psychology databases, typically you have the option to be able to filter and refine your searches by the research methods that are employed and described in an article. You'll be able to filter or refine by the types of subjects. So is the article looking at adolescents? Is it looking at the elderly? Is it focusing on men or women or college students? So you can go through, and depending on the discipline, there might be some special filters and refiners that you'll be able to employ based on what tends to show up in the literature. Often, but not always, these databases are going to provide you access to the full text of articles. So we do subscribe to some databases that really are just collections of records saying, yes, this article exists, here's who the author was, here's when and where it was published. But typically, these databases are also going to link to the full text of articles if we are paying for a subscription to that, to have that material. And those articles usually are available in PDF or HTML format. So PDF, it's a PDF that you can view on your screen or that you could download. HTML format is going to be more web-based, but typically you're going to be able to get access to those if we have paid for access to the full text content. So then we get to Discover at MU, and Discover at MU, even though I'm talking about that third, Discover at MU tends to be the thing that we showcase right up front on our website. It's the first thing that you see. It always loads when you load our the front page of our website. This tab is always going to load, and you're going to see this box here. So right here, you'll see Discover at MU. This is called a discovery tool, and lots of different academic libraries use something similar. Discover at MU, basically what this does is, instead of making you go to our catalog to look for books and go to different databases to look for articles, it basically allows you to see items from our catalog and from most of our databases using just a single search interface. So it's nearly comprehensive in terms of the content that it provides and the disciplines that it covers. It doesn't work with every single thing that we pay for and provide access to here at the library. There are a few databases and resources that don't play with Discover at MU, but for the most part, Discover at MU connects to all of these different resources. And when you do a search, it's going to bring back results from all of these different places. So instead of having to hop between database, doing your search over and over and over, you can do a single search and you can see all of the different results coming from all of these different resources. Since it is effectively sort of a mega database, it has faceted searching, which means that you can filter by format. You can filter by a publication date range. Maybe you only want to see things that were published in the past year or the past 5 years or only during the 1980s. You can adjust that publication date range back or forth to be able to see different windows of time. It allows for advanced searching where you can go through and you can include multiple keywords and you can structure really complex search strings that's going to bring back hopefully a set of results that is relevant to your needs and reflective of what we really have in our collection. One of the good things about Discover at MU is that if you use it the right way, it can also show you some information about materials that we don't have in our own collection, but there are things that we can help you get. And I am going to talk about that in a little bit. But there are ways in which you can use Discover at MU to see records of journal articles that we don't have access to, but at least it will tell you this article exists. And again, you might be able to see an abstract or summary. You can see who the authors were. You can see which journal it was published in and so on. So you'll at least be able to see that depending on how you filter and refine your search. And what Discover at MU is really great for is for open-ended searching. You can do specific title searches. You can do searches by author name in there, but really what a lot of students use it for is for like keyword searching. And I say students, but any researcher, you can do keyword searching and you can see what comes up from our book collection, from our journals, from the magazine content that we have access to. And then you can filter and refine from there. Sort of the drawback to that is obviously you're going to get flooded with lots of content depending on what your search term or search terms are. And then you have to kind of go through the process of filtering that down. But it is sort of it's a place that we tend to steer new students and new scholars towards that. And if you don't have a specific article in mind, if you don't have a citation for an article that you need to find, but you're just wanting to kind of see what's out there in the world, Discover at MU can be really helpful for you. As I said, Discover at MU, if you configure the search properly, it allows you to see at least records of items that we don't have in our collection. So you won't be able to see the full text, but at least you will be able to see a citation or a record of articles that we don't have. If you use that search at MU and beyond link, that effectively takes you to a customized advanced search for Discover at MU that is going to expand your search out beyond just things in our collections, and you'll be able to see some of those items. And then once you see those things, if we don't have access to it, then that's where we will be able to work with you to obtain those materials. And kind of the way I wanted just to visualize that, Discover at MU, especially when you use that search at MU and beyond feature, basically what you're going to see in your search results are materials in our collection. So physical materials, the books on our shelves, things like that. You're going to see records of the electronic materials in our collection. So articles that we have access to, ebooks, and you're going to get a link so that you can go directly to the full text there. And then you will also see records of articles not in our collection. And in most cases, you won't be able to link directly to the full text of those articles, but you will be directed towards tools that you can use to request those, or if they are articles that were published open access and are freely available, in some cases, you'll be able to get a direct link that will direct you out onto the web where that article exists. So it's a very powerful tool, and it really is worth using. And that's why we link to it and embed that right there on the front page of our website. As you use databases and Discover at MU, you're going to find a button that looks like this, kind of a gold button that's a little bit grainy and blown up, but you'll see a gold button that says Find It at MU. Find It at MU is basically the way that we link to full text articles from databases, from our Merlin records, and so on. And it's going to display within Discover at MU, and it's going to display in our databases. So basically, anytime you see this gold button that says Find It at MU, if you click that, you're either going to be directed to the full text of an article, or you're going to be directed to, if we have an article not in electronically but in print, you'll be directed to a record that tells you where that print copy is stored within our library. Or if we don't have any way to access it in our collection, you will be directed to a link that effectively allows you to start the process of requesting it so we can get it from another library. So sometimes I find, especially when I work with very new students, they're not used to the idea is like that they need to click this button. So get in the habit, if you see that button next to an article or an item that you're wanting to access, click on that, and that hopefully will take you to that item or direct you on what your next steps need to be so that you can access it. So Journal Finder, the next two tools that I'm going to mention are things that are very helpful if you are knowledgeable enough about your subject and the research that you're doing that there are known items that you want to access. So if you are far enough along in your research that you know that there is a specific journal that you want to look at, you want to find out, do we subscribe to, to Nature? Do we subscribe to a particular journal in your discipline? You can use the link that says a specific journal under the looking for header. And again, I'll show you here, that's on our website right down here where it says looking for a specific journal. And if you click on that, basically what this is going to allow you to do is it allows you to see, do we have access to it? So that tool is going to identify which journals and magazines and newspapers we have in our collection. It's going to tell you which format we have them in. So a lot of older content content, basically journal content going back, pre-2000s or pre-1990s. There's a good chance if we have access to it, we have access to it in a print format rather than an electronic format. So this tool will tell you, yes, we have this journal from this date range in print, and then we pick up in electronic in this date range. So you'll be able to tell where that content is located, whether it's in a database or whether it's somewhere on our shelves. So you'll be able to see the formats that we have them in. You'll be able to see the date range of coverage that we have, because in some cases we might have some of a print run, but not a full print run. Maybe our print run starts midway through the print history and goes to present day. Other times we have the full print run. If we subscribe to something, but there's an embargo, which means that we have access to it, but we only get access after 18 months, it will typically indicate in there what the embargo period is. And this is very useful when, as I said, when you have a specific journal in mind. If you know of a journal that you need to use, or for that matter, a magazine or a newspaper that you want to access, you can use this and you can type in that title. Journal Finder is not a good tool to use for just sort of exploration. It's not something that I would recommend that you try to use to just type in keywords to see, well, what types of journals do you have on this subject? What you really want to do is you want to use it when you know the title of the journal. And then likewise, Article Finder, with this link right under a specific journal, there's a specific article. Article Finder is going to allow you to quickly locate known articles in our collection. So if you have, say, a citation for an article that you want to use, you know exactly what the article is. You know who the author was, you know what the title of the article was, you know the journal that it was published in, you know things like volume and issue number, or the page that it started on, or if you have the DOI, that digital object identifier number that's typically assigned these days to journal articles. If you have that information, then you can use the Article Finder and you can plug that in to the search. And you'll be able to if we have it in our collection, you'll be directed to that article. And if we don't have it in the collection, then you'll be directed to instructions on how we might be able to get it for you. Again, this is not something that you would use just to do kind of exploration, sort of open-ended exploration. You would use this if you actually know of a specific article that you're interested in. And then finally, Google Scholar. Google Scholar may be something that you've actually used quite a bit, or maybe something you haven't used at all. And it's something that I feel like we need to spend more time in the library discussing, because it is a powerful tool, but you kind of need to know how to use it in order to get the most out of it. So Google Scholar, I linked to it in that LibGuide that I linked to in the chat at the beginning, and you can go back there at your own time. It's, I believe, scholar.google.com. Google Scholar is basically Google's search engine that connects you with scholarly literature. So things like journal articles, as well as books and dissertations. Google Scholar does not index things like newspaper articles or magazine articles. So just keep that in mind. But if it is something that was published in an academic journal, if it was in any of the books that Google has within its Google Books system, which is an entirely different thing. I'm not even going to discuss Google Books right now. Dissertations, theses, items that are held in different university repositories, conference proceedings and presentations, things like that, you'll be able to find through Google Scholar. Google Scholar is kind of the strengths of Google Scholar is that its interface is immediately familiar to most users. You get that Google search bar. It links to a lot of freely available and open access content. So even if you aren't affiliated with a university, there's a good chance that you can do some searching on Google Scholar and actually find access to articles that they're available without having to go through a paywall or type in usernames and passwords and things like that. So it does link out to a lot of open access content, which is great. Again, if you are out of school and you're just wanting to see what's out there, there is a lot of scholarly content that is available open access these days. It works well with our collections, so they can also direct you to things that we have access to through subscriptions. But to do that, it does require some back-end configuration. You have to go into some settings, and you essentially have to tell Google, using your account, you need to tell them that you want to sync your account and your searches with MU's collection. And I have instructions for that again in that library guide. And I'm going to go ahead and post that link again right here now in the chat so that you can get there. If you go into that guide, and if you find the link in the quick links, that's sort of the instructions for configuring Google Scholar to work with Find It at MU. Basically, if you go through and do that, then what you're going to notice is that if we have access to the article through our own collections, then what you should see is a link off to the right-hand side in your search results that says Find It at MU. If you don't configure that, then if you are off campus, you're not going to see that link. So you're not going to be able to access things that are in our collections. So just keep that in mind. You want to be able to do that. And that works with, again, if you move on to a different university or college later on, you'll want to talk with them to find out if they have worked with Google to make sure that their materials are discoverable through Google Scholar. Jumping back for just a second, I do want to note that Google Scholar search options are less sophisticated than those that you tend to find in databases or in Discover at MU. Google Scholar is very handy for keyword searching, but when it comes to searching by subject, when it comes to being able to search within the contents of a particular issue of a particular journal, or to be able to see everything that was published by a particular journal in, say, chronological order or by order of publication, it can't do those things. And a lot of our databases and Discover at MU can do those things. So even though Google Scholar is very handy and very easy to use, I would say don't let it become your only tool. Make sure that you kind of use a lot of these tools in your toolbox and be able to engage with and search for things using a lot of different tools. Google Scholar is very handy. I use it as a librarian. I use it during my reference shifts because it's very quick, it's very simple, but it does have some drawbacks. And the one caveat that I do try to, or warning that I give to people as well, is I was a big user of Google Reader, the RSS feed tool that Google had that was fantastic. And Google couldn't monetize it and didn't really have a team that could continue developing it. And they ended up just getting rid of it after a while. And Google Scholar hasn't changed all that much over the years. It still works pretty much the same way that it did 5 or 10 years ago. And there's no guarantee in 5 or 10 years that Google will keep it up, or that they will make improvements to it, or that they might not just phase it out entirely just because they've decided, it's not worth the time and money that they've invested in it. So again, that's just to say, don't let it become your only tool. Make sure that you become comfortable with things like Discover at MU or different databases that we have. All right, so I'm going to keep on moving along here. So we have it. You found something through the searching. Now, what do you do? How do you actually get in and take a look at it? If it's a physical item, most of our stacks are open for browsing. Some colleges and universities, their libraries have closed stacks, which means you can't go up into them and actually walk around in the stacks to try to find things. Here at Ellis and at most of our libraries around campus, you can go up into the upper floors. You can walk around in our collection. You can look at the books on the shelves, and then you will pull the book off the shelf and bring it back down to the main floor to check out. So you are always welcome to go up and browse the stacks. If you ever get lost or confused, just ask for help. We have people around here who will gladly help you find the item on the shelf that you're looking for, figure out which floor you're supposed to be on, which wing of the building you're supposed to be in, which row of shelves you need to look on to find the book that you're looking for. And just a note on organization, you don't need to know the Library of Congress classification system, but just understand that that's the way that we organized most of the materials here at Ellis and in most of our other libraries. We don't use Dewey Decimal System here. like a lot of public libraries or smaller academic libraries, we use Library of Congress. And basically, all that means is that our books are arranged and ordered on the shelves by topic. So there is a call number range specifically for economics or for Chinese history or for Polish literature and so on. And that just means that all books on those topics are going to be grouped together. The letters that make up, you see here on this book, HD 87 is the main call number here on this book. Letters don't necessarily correspond to the topic. So you need to understand that, like, a lot of our literature starts with the letter P. And P doesn't, it's not L for literature or F for fiction. And you don't really need to know, unless you really begin to use our collections a whole lot. You don't need to memorize LC system classification system or know what different call number lettering and numbers mean. You just need to know the order in which we keep things on the shelves. And then you can talk with us if you have any questions about, okay, where do I find the PSs? Where do I find the HDs in the building? You can request a pickup, and you can do that within our, for physical items in our books and media search, that Merlin search. There is a request button that you'll typically see. If that button pops up, you can click that button and you can indicate when and where you'd like to be able to pick up an item, or at least where you'd like to be able to pick up the item. Do you want to pick it up at Ellis? Do you want to pick it up at the journalism library, at the engineering library? Where would you like to pick it up? You can indicate how long you're willing to wait for that item to arrive. And then once it is arrived and ready for pickup at the desk, you will get an email notification. And new for this semester, we have pickup lockers. So instead of going to the desk and asking to pick up the item, once the item's available, you will be notified that you can be notified that it's available for pickup in one of these lockers. It's not ready yet, but it's going to be a contactless locker, which just means you won't have to interact with any real people. It'll just be a screen there and the device itself. It has 24/7 access. So these are located in parts of the building that you can get into at all hours of the day, even when the library itself is closed. So kind of that main vestibule over on the west side of the building, you walk in there, that first set of doors, you'll be able to see this and access it. We have these at Ellis and at the School of Medicine, and we're saying coming soon because they're still not up and online and running just yet. They are there. It's sitting there. If you go in the west entrance, you'll be able to see it, but it's not ready for use yet. But keep an eye on our website because it will be ready soon. We also have a scan and deliver service. So again, when you're looking at a book in Merlin, in that books and media search, and say, you don't need the whole book, but you sure would like chapter 5 of it. If we have the book, and this is a little counterintuitive, or maybe doesn't make a whole lot of sense here, but it's kind of the best that we've been able to figure out so far. You'll see this button that says request a book next to the location. So if you see that, it's an oval button that says request a book. If you click on it, actually what you're going to get is this little pop-up that says, do you want to request a chapter or do you want to request the book? If you want to request a chapter, you can click that button and then you will go to a form in which you can indicate which chapter or page ranges you want. And then we have people on our end who can pull that book off the shelf and they can scan that chapter and they can send you that chapter in PDF format. So if you don't want to come into the building, if you don't want to check out the book, you just need those 20 pages, you can use that feature. Now, of course, the book needs to be in our collection. We can only do it when it's not checked out, so it's available on the shelves. So keep that in mind, but that feature is available to you. Okay, so last 10 minutes here. What happens when we don't have it? As I said, our collection's always changing. Sometimes we have to unsubscribe from journals. Sometimes we have to drop databases from our collection. Sometimes there are books that we just have never owned. What happens when there's something that you want that we don't have? So in that Merlin search, that books and media search, you have access to the print books that you typically find and other physical materials that you find in that search. Those are things that are held here on the Columbia campus in our various libraries. So you have access, you have the ability and the right to check those things out typically, unless they are restricted from checkout. But You also have access to all of those types of materials, the print books that are held at other libraries in the UM system. So books that are at UMKC, books that are at UMSL, books that are down in Rolla. You can check those books out as well, just as if they were books that we held. And you can do that through Merlin. If you're using that Merlin search, typically when you're searching, you at some point or another will see this little drop down here. And by default, often it's set to MU. If you use that drop down and you change it to all Merlin, then all of a sudden you will start seeing results that pop up from not just MU, but those other campuses. And you will be able to then see if those items are available. And if they are print items, if they are books, then typically you can request a copy and have one of them delivered over from Kansas City or St. Louis or Rolla. Now, you will also see things like ebooks from those campuses, and you don't have access to their ebooks, but you will be able to check out items that are physical items that are held at those libraries. We also can get books from academic and public and special libraries in the states of Missouri. So other non-UM system campuses around the state, as well as public library systems in the state, as well as in Arkansas, Colorado, Iowa, Oklahoma, Texas, and Wyoming. We are a member of two different consortia. We're a member of the Mobius Consortium, which is primarily Missouri, but also some adjoining states. And then we have a sort of a partnership with these prospector libraries in Colorado and Wyoming. So if we don't have it in the system, then we can start reaching out to those libraries, and you can check out items from there, and then they're delivered typically by a courier over to our library, and you would just check it out from here as you would one of our books. To do that, if you find a book in Merlin and you see this little button off to the side that says search Mobius, then you can click that and it will take you to a different catalog where you can see if other libraries have that available. And then there's a request button in there. And then finally, if you can't get it from us, if it's not at any of the other UM libraries, if it's not available in Mobius and it's not available in Prospector, but you know it exists, we can try to get it for you from other libraries in or even beyond the United States. So other academic libraries in the US, academic libraries in Canada, in libraries in Europe and elsewhere all around the world, we can reach out to those libraries and see which libraries have a copy, and hopefully we can get one of them to send it to us. The way that you get to our Interlibrary Loan request form, again, it's on that front page. You'll see this ILL at MU link right here. ILL typically, and Cindy, this is one place where you can correct me, typically no cost to you. If you use ILL, sometimes in public libraries, sometimes there is a charge, but typically most ILL requests that you place, we are not going to charge you for that. That's something that we absorb on our end. It works for articles. So while you can retrieve books, they're held in other places. Also, if places have subscriptions to journals or have copies of journals and they have an article that we don't, we can get that article for you as well. And that's really the thing that kind of takes the place or that helps fill in the gaps when we have to cancel subscriptions to journals or databases. We can still get those articles for you through Interlibrary Loan, and it doesn't take too long. PDFs of articles tend to arrive very quickly, and I say very quickly, give it a day or two. But when you put in that request, typically if somebody has it, especially if they already have a digital copy, it doesn't take that long for it to arrive, and then you will receive an email saying that it's ready for you. Books can take some time to arrive because they have to be shipped through the Postal Service. So it does take time for a library to locate their copy and package it and send it to us. Lending periods for ILL books tend to be shorter than lending periods for our own. So one of the things you'll be able to find in that guide is a link to looking at borrowing periods for undergraduate students, grad students, faculty, and so on. If typically you could check out an MU book for 4 months, it might be that you can only have an ILL book for a month before you have to send it back. But that's just that's standard. But understand that we can at least get it for you for a little while. Whoop. And then finally, and this is how I'm going to end it up, and we'll have a few minutes for questions here at the very end. If you're feeling lost or confused after all this, and this is a huge info dump, I realize, just understand that a lot of our librarians are subject specialists. They work with our collections. They're the ones that are having to make the decisions about the materials that we purchase, the journals that we subscribe to, or in some cases have to unsubscribe from, and so on. And they are knowledgeable about the materials we have in different disciplines. And our librarians can help you with your research. And I've included a link in that guide to our directory of subject librarians so that you can see who your subject librarian is. And you can reach out to that person at any point if you have any questions. They are used to providing assistance through a variety of formats. So we have a reference chat service on our website. We do face-to-face and virtual consultations. So one-on-ones with you either in a consultation room or over Zoom, where you can sit down and you can talk with us about what your research needs are, what you're looking for, and we can guide you through that process. We can answer emails. We can talk to you over the phone. We even do text messaging. So there are lots of different ways you can get in touch with us. And then we have an Ask the Librarian feature on a couple different places on our website. Here, our chat window over on the right-hand side of the page is always there, and you can chat with us during sort of regular business hours. You'll be able to reach somebody who actually works here. And then the Ask the Librarians link over here, kind of in the bottom right-hand corner, will take you to a variety of other options and ways in which you can get in touch with us. So that's it. Again, like I said, not going to walk through and tell you about here's how you do searching in this database or in Discover@MU, but more it's just sort of like, here are the ways in, and here's what our collection is like. And especially if we don't have it, there are still ways that we can do that. So what I really want, there are ways that we can get that for you. What I would really encourage you to do as you have time, and one more time, I will paste this in here, is this LibGuide, this discovery and access guide that I've linked to in the chat. That will direct you on the quick links tab to a lot of the things that I mentioned today. So you'll be able to get to these different, to our Merlin search, to Discover@MU, to our databases lists, that link to configuring Google Scholar, the direct link to our interlibrary loan form, our subject librarians directory, all of those things. This is going to stay live indefinitely. So save that link, bookmark it. You can come back here whenever you need to. And yeah, so that's it. We've got a couple minutes for questions. I'm happy to hang past 4 o'clock. I know that some people will have to go. But I did want to see if anybody had any questions. I can do a screen share and walk you through some searching or some clicks through into some of these resources, but I'll just open it up to the floor to see if anybody has anything that they'd like me to talk about. Well, thank you all. You'll have a good day.